All right, so welcome. I'm not sure where Nick is today. We'll go ahead and kick things off. So on today's agenda, so I've been part of this working group for since February, and I've been listening carefully to all the discussions we've been having and the problems we've been identifying. And as I've mentioned to DWAS not too long ago, it's been causing me to develop a few concerns about the salt extensions project that I wanted to talk openly with the group about. And and we can kind of I'll raise my the things I'm concerned about. Max, you're also welcome to add a few things as well. Hi, Murphy. Thank you for joining. And then I think DWAS has some pretty good things to mention in we kind of already played out this conversation a little bit, and DWAS has some good things to say, but we would like to open the conversation up to a few more people essentially. So for DWAS, this is going to be a little bit of a recap, but for me, basically, I think I have four buckets of concern when it comes to the salt extensions. The first one for me is risk. I think for one, we've been, I think you mentioned, DWAS, that when you had the pull request that took all of the community maintained extensions out of the repository, it was impacting something like 1 million lines of code. Am I really misremembering that? Was that what you said?
It was like 500,000.
500,000. Okay, thank you. So that is an order of magnitude difference. So that's worth calling out. Um, so it's impacting 500,000 lines of code. And to me, that's a large change, a very fundamental change in the code base. And for me, it's hard to understand what the full nature of the risk will be when impacting that much of the code base. I feel with that many lines being impacted, the possibility of problems occurring approaches near certainty. The only one that I can, and I don't think we'll be able to fully anticipate or know what those problems are going to be in advance. And so, like, part of the problem is that I imagine we're going to have a lot of people who will discover they were using some of those extensions, and suddenly we'll get like all these requests, like, how do I get these extensions back? What do I do? And then that leads into my second bucket of concern, which is around installation. So if they're panicking and they're like, oh no, I realized that several of my salt states relied on extensions that were ported out to the community extensions repository. How do I get them back? So that I can stop the bleeding, stop the immediate pain that's happening in my system because I was using those extensions and I didn't know it. And like another thing that came out of our discussion, DWAS, a couple of weeks ago, was how do they know that that's what's causing the problem when suddenly things fail? How do they know, oh, it's because you were using an extension that was ported out and now you need to get that functionality back into your system in order to have that functionality again. So installing, being able to quickly get extensions that were ported out to community extensions is a key worry of mine. Like, if there's a way to like make that process easy and light and not too difficult if somebody is experiencing sudden system failure because of a missing extension. And then the third bucket of concern that I have is around documentation and discovery of the salt extensions. We can go into that more, but we've talked about this at length in the salt extensions working group. How do we make it so that people can discover the extensions and have adequate documentation in order to use those extensions? That's another area of concern. And then I just have general concerns about, can we make maintainership scale effectively? A lot of the people who are doing salt extensions maintainership are doing this in their spare time. And I just wonder if there's a way that we can make those processes scale and things like that. So that's my laundry list of things. I want to ask Max, would you mind giving your perspectives on this too? Like, are there things that you agree with me on, disagree with me on, that you would add, or things like that? Max, what are some of your thoughts on that?
I think I mostly agree that the project is lacks sufficient resources to be completed before the next major release. I guess it's scheduled for autumn, right?
Yeah, something like that.
Like September, October, like that.
Yeah, I think October is what I've heard most recently.
I think we should develop plan B maybe.
Mm.
And don't expect that every extracted module will be ported into a proper salt extensions and can be installed and that is tested.
Oh,
And
I
I think
definitely agree
so.
with that. It's not going to, I don't expect that all of those community extensions will be maintained by then.
So I think that maybe we should set the expectations early enough. If we all agree that we are not going to make it, and I think it's a given, but I would like to hear what Nick can say about that. So we should set the expectations right away, maybe, if it's a given, like something like salt announce mailing list, so people don't upgrade blindly and discover that modules are no longer there. And maybe there should be some guidelines on how to port the modules back in quick and dirty way. Like maybe just putting them into the into the local salt file tree, into underscore modules, underscore states, and get it working, and then direct people to the porting process and whether they want to participate in maintaining them as proper extensions. That's what I think.
I was wondering if part of that announcement, if we changed 3008 is supposed to be a long-term release, and if we would change that to a short-term release so that it's indicating that it is somewhat experimental, new features and stuff, so that we can get it more stable and maybe make 3009 a long-term release. What do you feel about that, Max?
I think it's a good idea. I had the same thought a couple of months ago. I believe there would be more breakages in 3008. And making it long term is kind of risky as well.
Okay, I like what we're proposing here. So it sounds like essentially keep possibly 3008 an STS release to hopefully set expectations and let people know that if they upgrade to STS, there's the possibility that it could break things, which I think is fair. And then that buys us a little bit of time in terms of making sure that the release that removes all of those extensions, that it's in a good state that won't break people's systems. But what would be the green flags that would be like, okay, this future release 3009 or whatever, the one that has all of the community extensions removed, what would be the green light where we'd be like, this one is ready to be an LTS? Is it that we would solve the problems that that I'm mentioning, the problems with installation in particular, and possibly also fixing the issues around documentation and discovery? I don't think that the documentation and discovery one is necessarily blocking, but I do think the installation one is probably blocking. What do you all think about that? Like, so that's my question. What would allow us to have confidence that a release that is that has the extensions removed, the community ones, would be good for LTS.
So for me, I would like to see 3006 into a state where people could say they were confident, right? Because right now we have issues in 3006, even around, pip installing
Hmm.
things into the environment. So that would be where I would be looking to see like those bugs getting resolved and not having new ones come in. Um, at least as far as installation goes.
Yeah, that makes sense. Mm-hmm. By the way, welcome, David. How are you doing today?
I'm good, thank you. I had some trouble getting the link in the right place, so that's why I'm late.
Oh, no worries. It's always good to have you. So just to catch you up, let me put the meeting notes in again. You probably saw the meeting notes that we're just kind of I'm airing a couple of concerns that I have about the salt extensions projects. And just to catch you up on the conversation so far, I was identifying like problems around risk of breaking the system with the 3008 release, where the extensions will be removed, and also talking about the difficulty around installation, like how do we get those, if it breaks their system, how do we quickly and easily get those extensions back into their system if they need it? How do we have a happy path to installation that makes it quick and easy and not too difficult? And then a host of other things like around documentation and discovery and maintainership scaling, I suppose. So which are all issues that you've been present in all of these meetings, so you're well aware of many of the things that we've been talking about. And what we were just kind of talking about is maybe we're not confident that we can necessarily get 3008 into a place where it won't break people's systems, and so we were floating the possibility of maybe making that one an STS release instead of an LTS release. I was asking the question about what it would take to where we would feel confident that a future salt release could be an LTS release with the community extensions removed. And Diwaz was saying that first we need to get 3006 into a high quality state. There's still some breakages around like pip install and things like that. So that's kind of catching you up on the conversation. David, is there anything that you want to add to that conversation so far?
Not particularly. I mean, yes, the points you raise are very important. I guess the question I have is, are you aiming these questions at the community or at the project itself? Because yeah, an effort of this size needs sort of a big investment in manpower from the project, I would say, and I don't know if that's available. So that's my concern.
Yeah. I think it's a valid concern too.
Yeah, I mean, the project, as far as people dedicated by Broadcom to work on salt, is severely limited at this point.
And what that means is that we will rely more on the community for support. And the question is, can we make that, like, I think it's possible to, to build a more robust community contributing system. And I think to your point, Diwaz, that's what we would like to see, right? Like in
Yeah, I
order
mean,
to, yeah, go
in
ahead.
a lot of ways, that's sort of the impetus for even wanting to pull the extensions out in the first place is like, we know that we don't have the resources to maintain that code.
Yeah. And so this would like help us to get to that potentially that future state in which the project is robust because the community supporting it is equally robust. But the process of getting there, I think, will be difficult. And like you're mentioning, Diaz and David, will like it would need the community coming together on this piece and organizing themselves, and so that's another piece here, I think. Yeah.
Right. The way that I see it is, it's, as far as the core team goes, it's our responsibility to enable in the code anything that needs to happen. So, making sure that pip and, salt pip works, making sure that, for lack of a better word, APIs remain stable. That changes in the salt code base itself aren't going to break extensions. But as far as actually doing the maintaining of the extensions and writing tests and all that stuff, and I would say even packaging at this point is going to be solely on the maintainers of the extensions, and that, again, I mean, that is the whole point of pulling things out, is to force people that actually do use those extensions. It's going to be a wake-up call for them when things do break. And then if they come and say like, well, who's maintaining this? And then we say, well, nobody. It's basically, it's going to be up to either the person that needs it or someone else, but it's not going to be the core team.
I actually don't mind that vision. The only thing that I would say is that does put the onus on, say, this group or on the community in general to have a way to catch the people who do that. Like if they're like, hey, I'm using this community extension, why isn't it being maintained? To be like, well, you could maintain it, and there's this whole path to do that, and it's not too bad, like join this meeting, contribute this, like join our process, like connect with the people who are spearheading this program. I think there is a way to get there. We're not there today, but I think there's a way to get there, possibly.
Yeah, probably a lot of that is going to be back to what Max was saying, around communication and documentation. Like communicating early enough, like what Max said, is maybe we should be trying to communicate this now, and reiterate the communication several times before the day of 3008 comes.
I keep saying that Salt Announce mailing list is underappreciated. Like many people historically, for historic reasons, read it and using it for such kind of announces like extensions or core modules removal, feature freeze, release candidates should be used more often. And also I have a question, what will happen with the extensions that are kind of core extensions? Does Broadcom has resources to maintain them?
We plan to keep maintaining the core extensions. Now whether they will stay in the salt code base and how long they will stay in the salt code base, I don't have an answer for that yet. At some point we would like to start pulling, especially some of the big ones out. But we right now are still sort of acclimating ourselves to the changes that have happened. And I expect that it'll be some time still before we'll have any plans around those.
So for an example, if I remember correctly, the Docker module is extended core, right?
Probably, yeah, I don't remember specifically, but
so it's going to be removed from the salt package, and will it do you have time and resources to make a proper extensions out of it, or it's also
We're not going to remove it unless we have time to make a proper extension out of it.
Okay. And also unrelated question. Last week I got a question, what is the proper extension template? And I directed this person to a salt-extension repository. And as it turned out, it's kind of broken. The syntax is broken out of the box. And it requires Python 3.9, or sorry, 3.10, which is not stated. And the person tried to use it with Python 3.11 and something broke. And then I think someone from the community pointed me to this new community-based template that uses Copier. And
yeah, the one that Nick's
and now we
group has
have
been doing.
two templates, and I'm not sure which is going to be official. I guess it's not a concern because it's for template is required for new extensions. And we have a biggest problem of existing extensions, but still it might affect the amount of issues people will uncover when they start dealing with that.
I do feel like I recall in the last meeting where Pedro was here, and I'm sorry that you weren't able to be here, Max, or maybe it was 2 meetings ago, at some point we were talking about all the developments that have been made on the community supported copier template that Nick's group has been making. And I think we talked it over with Pedro, and he felt confident that the community maintained copier template was superior to the core maintained one, and that we should probably deprecate the core maintained one in favor of the community one. Do you feel like, Max, like, did you happen to point your friend to the person to the community maintained one, and did they experience problems with that one as well?
Yes, I pointed this person to this community maintained extension, but I don't know whether he succeeded or not.
Okay. Yeah, I could see that.
So I think because the old one or the official one is currently broken, it doesn't make sense to fix it. Maybe it can be quickly phased out and we can go from there. And another thought, sorry, I think about the early communication. Can we make the 3008 release, for example, in 1 or 2 months? I mean, the release candidate, so people start testing it a couple of months before the release.
Yeah, what do you think?
I think for me, it's too early to agree to that. Yeah, I do agree that we need to do, have a decent amount of time for RCs. But I will also say that historically, people don't test our RCs. Like, they just don't. Like, we give time, we give announcements, which we'll continue to do, but the expectation that people are going to test and find problems because we have an RC, I am very skeptical of that, just based on historic
I think
precedents.
I think it's the problem of the tragedy of the commons, if you think about it, because, and that's a little bit like my concern about making 3006 an STS, which I fully agree with, by the way. But there's a problem with the tragedy of the commons, because in order to have a high quality release, it needs to be well tested ahead of time, because everybody wants a high quality release. But it's a tragedy of the commons in that, like, by introducing an RC into your system, you're taking on a certain amount of work, and you're also taking on a certain amount of risk that you're going to introduce into your system from the things that that get broken or things like that. And so it creates this kind of downward spiral in which we need to have a high quality release, and we need people to try it out in production and kick the tires in and show where the problems are. But the incentives are misaligned for that, because so everybody wants a high quality release, but instead what happens is they upgrade when the official release comes out, and then everyone freaks out and gets upset. I don't know how to solve the tragedy of the commons for that one. It's kind of a perverse incentive cycle, to be honest.
Well, one thing I can say about that is I have tested release candidates in the past. I've discussed this with Shane in the Windows working group. The problem I have with a release candidate is there's like a different process that you have to follow to install it. So yeah, you really have to go out of your way to install a release candidate. So, I mean, I sort of understand that it can't all be lumped in one place, but it needs to be made easier.
And so also, like, what I wonder is, so making it easier to install the RC release and kick the tires in, but then also roll it back. I don't know how easy the rollback process is either. Is that something you encounter too, David?
Well, I would only test it in a test environment. So, yeah, which would be ephemeral, essentially.
Yeah.
But I don't disagree with you. If it was possible to go back easily, I think, yeah, probably more people would do it.
I don't mean to be a downer. I'm just saying that's like a problem that would probably need to be solved in order to make it easier to test the RC or to incentivize it. Like, at least removing all the friction would help. I'm still skeptical, like you, was that people would even do it then, but at least all the friction points would be removed potentially, you know. I don't know. So let me see if I'm summarizing what I think we're at. It sounds like it's a tricky thing, because if we change 3008 to an STS release again, which I support that move, because it gives the community more time to potentially rally and develop the workflows and processes and the underlying technology for giving the SALT extensions, the community maintained one, the best chance to succeed. And on our current trajectory and timeline, we still need time to make that possible, because everybody's kind of a volunteer and working on this on their spare time and just trying to get through the day sometimes. So the community needs a little bit more time in order to get to the point where they can make the extensions have a good chance of success. And the problem though is, like, if we kick the can down the road and make 3008 the STS, then we don't get people testing in production, and so we don't always see what the problems are. So it's a weird chicken and an egg problem in some ways. Like, we need people to test it to help us uncover the bugs and figure out where the problems are, which will motivate us to fix the problems. But I don't know. It's a difficult problem to solve. And I apologize, I'm only introducing problems instead of solutions.
So let's explore the alternative, or the other way. If 3008 is long-term support, so basically Broadcom team would be able to iterate on the point releases as long as it's required, right?
Yep.
And it can be stabilized with some time. Is it a better option potentially in terms of how long this release can be available to test, and with some early warnings, maybe it's also an option.
Yeah, it's tricky.
Yeah, that's why for me, at least for right now, I keep coming back to trying to stabilize the process as much as we can in 3006. Um, because we definitely know of at least some issues, and I feel like we can probably enumerate more, um, and then just try to get everything fixed as much as we can in 3006, and then maybe not even make a decision on 3008 until like the August time frame.
Are there potential concerns with people who with specific upgrade cycles? For example, who only use LTS releases? Will they have too many changes if they jump straight from 3006 to 3008, skipping 3007? I think 3007 had some also major changes. Can it be too drastic?
I don't think so. I
I
mean,
think it's going to be drastic because of the extensions.
right. That obviously that's going to be
But
drastic. But
other than that, I think we need to get the messaging around. Here's how the extensions work and how you migrate. Need to get that right. And we won't be able to cover it all because we don't know all the pieces of salt that they currently use. But we should be able to cover the majority.
I have another question for you. So
you're on mute.
shoot, sorry. I have another
Mute.
goodness, like why isn't that working? Like I keep pressing the button and it doesn't unmute me. Okay, should be good now. I have a question for you, which is that if we've identified that one of the kind of the key pieces, the ingredients that will determine whether this project is successful or not, the community maintained extensions project is successful. If the key is that we need to have like the right community with the right support, and the community needs to rally around this and like help distribute the work, and different people take on different parts of the maintainership problem. I have a question about because I have a lot of experience building large communities that work together, and I have a question about whether this is a we need more bodies problem. Like, do we need to attract more people to this group, or do we need to work out the core processes and then work on getting more maintainers into this group? My hunch is that it's the latter, where we need to like in this group kind of figure out the easy path to maintainership, like and work out a couple of different scenarios for how people can what our workflow is going to be for people adopting an extension and begin maintaining it. Like we need to kind of work out the core processes for how they'll communicate with Nick's group, you know, and how the processes will work, how the installation piece will work, how the maintainer piece will work. Like I think we need to still have a lot of those kind of key conversations and work out those key processes and workflows. And then once that's solid, then we can begin bringing more people in and have it like an easy path for them to begin contributing to this project. That's been my experience with other communities that I've built, where sometimes there's like a period where almost like a year or something like that, where we just need to have conversations where we work out all the workflows and details and processes. And then once it's in a pretty decent place, then we can begin farming out the work, bringing in more people and scaling at that point. So that we can begin, you know, it's kind of like you need to build the engine and then you can run it like after the engine is built. So my sense is that that's what needs to happen with the salt extensions working group. Yeah, anyway, that's my 2 cents on it.
Okay, I was going to make a point about where are the big external users of salt on this? I mean, I see very little presence of big companies, and I mean, maybe I'm making an assumption here, but I'm pretty sure that some big companies do use salt, and you never see anything from them in terms of contribution. So I don't know, I don't have any visibility into that, but I think they have a vested interest in this transition working properly. I mean, just one name off the top of my head is I think SUSE Linux uses salt in their product. And so would it be possible to kind of reach out to those kinds of people and get them involved in this?
I think you make a great point, and I ask myself those questions too. Like, it seems like so many companies rely on this technology. Where are they? Are they just, do they just assume it is powered on, like magically? Like it just like powers on without them? Or like, do they not see this as a business critical technology that they should also invest either people or money or something into? I ask those same questions.
Well, we do have contributors that contribute to the main salt repo from SUSE. I mean, they're definitely out there. They're definitely in the last month they filed quite a few bugs. So I know they're out there, and they do make contributions. I can think of a few others. But then there's also a large group of users who are purely just users, and they may not even be technically inclined enough to make code contributions.
And there are some large commercial companies that use salt, and when they get a breakage, we jump to get the fix in.
Like to a different technology like Ansible?
No. For example, well, I don't want to name the company, but he and I were. They said this isn't working, and we figured it out. What was the problems and stuff? And some of the cases are. One case they were on Rel 7 using OpenSSL 1.x, and the problem was in OpenSSL 1.x, and it was about to end of life in 3 weeks, and even the OpenSSL team threw up their hands. They had it fixed in 3.x, but not, they tried backporting the fix and it blew up. And that was using Salt API because Cherry Pie going down into. So there are companies that, in a way, get our code improved by them pinging our execs who say, this must be, can you address this, etc.
Yeah.
Do they contribute?
Actually, they contribute in that they do quite a bit of testing of our stuff before. So
that is valuable, as we've identified earlier. So yeah,
they've been quite good that way.
Is it a good idea for Broadcom to make a list of such companies and invite them explicitly into maybe this working group or into testing or into contributing with specific accent to focus on salt extensions and help in the transition process?
I think it's worth exploring. I mean, like that's the model that a lot of companies use for business critical technologies that are open source. Like take, for example, Facebook, and their business critical application is of course React. they actually pay for Facebook employees to you know, to develop and contribute to React. I don't know if they have a controlling interest in it at this point. But yeah, like that, like that's a key thing that a lot of forward thinking companies, not saying that Meta is forward thinking per se, but like that's the way that they invest in open source is by paying people to like dedicate time to that project. And there's a lot of other companies that's how they choose to invest in open source, is by having dedicated developers who will contribute to a specific project that they consider to be business critical. So I do think it's a model worth exploring.
We can put the feelers out to them and see, because of course major companies have their own business decisions, etc.
Right.
But we can suggest it to them for sure.
Other thoughts, Max or David? Because we're here to talk to you, really. I wish Nick was here.
Only that's sort of what I was getting at, was that can there be some outreach to these companies and see what they can contribute in terms of developer time and things like that. Because I mean, personally, I'm self-employed, so when I work on Salt, I don't get paid. So it's difficult, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it all makes sense. Okay, well, any other thoughts? Anything you want to share? I think the discussion's kind of wrapping up. I'll summarize unless we have other points to make.
Speaking of release candidates, if the release candidates is not early release candidate is not an option, are there nightly builds for the frozen next major release branch?
We do have nightly builds, yes.
But they are for the master branch, or both for master and next?
Yeah, they are master, which is going to be 3008, right? So, I mean, at some point we will create a release branch, but it'll be closer to when we're doing an RC. That generally happens
Okay.
right as we do the RC.
Okay.
And then there will be, I believe we have nightlies, not just of master, but nightlies of all maintained.
Yeah. We've got up for 3006 and 3007.
Yeah.
Well.
So once we create the RC, there will be nightlies for that release.
Did you have a follow-up to that, Max, or?
No, just thinking out loud.
No worries. David, did you have, you had come off mute for a second. Did you have another question?
No, I was going to make a point about a nightly build as well, but yeah, Max has made that point.
Sounds good. Well, before we wrap up, I do have one last question for you, Diwa. So, because thank you for coming. I recognize it's really early in the morning and want to make sure we get as much value out of your joining us here as possible. So when you and I had the conversation about this like a couple of weeks ago, and just now earlier in the call, like you mentioned that the whole point of the community extensions is to help like kind of poke the community a little bit and say, okay, it's your time to like step up and help contribute to this technology that you care about. And when we talked a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about it's the community's chance to kind of take the ball and run with this a little bit. And it's our chance to like believe in the community and see what they can do. So my question for you, D, was, if you were like, since I recognize that you want to kind of maintain some distance from the project and let the community take ownership and control of it over it, but if you were operating as a advisor, just giving advice to this group, are there any kind of like, what would you say from your perspective would be the most important thing to tackle first, and what would be your approach in tackling it? Like just in terms of just giving advice to the group, like what do you think would be the key things? Like first maybe tackle this, then this. What do you see as priority 0 for this group, I guess?
I think a good place to start would be the template thing. And then I would say coming up with a real solid way of getting testing in place on an extension. I don't know right now where that kind of stands, how easy it is, how much testing is happening on the extensions that there are, but that definitely would be my focus, is making sure that the testing happens and is automated, as well as then automated releases, which is sort of the same things I've been saying for salt for several years. So my position is kind of standard, I guess.
That makes sense that testing would be crucial to the success of this project. And that's kind of what we spent the last session talking about at length. Any additional thoughts on that?
And then automation around releases, right? So that to lower the burden, like, so the initial burden of putting the automation in place is fairly high, but once it's there, the idea is cutting a new release is super easy. Anybody, somebody that's not the maintainer of the extension could come along, submit a bug fix, it would get tested, and then the maintainer of the extension can do a release like very easily. So those would be the things I would be striving for.
Yeah, good thoughts. Any questions about like testing from Max or David? We had a big session about it last time, but there's always more to be had. Sounds good. Let me ask the same question of you, Murphy. Like, what would you recommend to the community if you were like, these are the key things that I think you should focus on as we're building out the engine for maintainership for the salt extensions? What would you say?
We all use the same tool for extracting, getting the extension, and then using the same tool for unit testing and stuff, where we plug in essentially the tests that we have in our extension, but the infrastructure for pulling those tests in be the same, so that we're all testing similarly. Will make things easier that way, rather than having many disparate testing environments that people will use, because some will be better than others, some will be minimal, and so it'd be better if there was a way to do the extraction, a way to do the builds and testing framework, where you're essentially plugging in, here's my extension with its tests and source code, and it executes it to build it and then run the tests provided. And to throw up errors if there's no tests provided, and said, sorry, you can't proceed until you do have tests. And we would give out code coverage results so that we can see just how well that extension has been tested.
I like that. Good stuff. Well, sage advice from Murphy and Diwaz. Thank you so much. Oh, go ahead. Yeah, more?
I was going to say, I think we're going to spend more time getting infrastructure working right alongside the community to get these extensions going than actually getting future developments in salt, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I could see that. And I think that's natural for open source projects. Like they reach a point where the maintainer, the maintenance of the project is like more important than the development of new features. I think that's a natural stage as a project matures, and we're probably clearly seeing the signs that we're reaching that stage, right? The only unfortunate part is maintenance is not as much fun as new feature development, is it? So
No.
that's part of the challenge there. It's
I'm
where the
tired
hard
of
work
bug
comes.
fixes.
Yeah. And that's why the tragedy of the commons is always in the back of my mind. How do we incentivize people to contribute to the common good, to the open source project? How do we make sure those incentives align so that people put in their fair share, put in more than they take out? So yeah. Good stuff. All right. Well, I think we are getting at time. I want to give a gigantic thank you to Diwaz for being willing to get up super early in the morning and join us for this meeting. And huge thanks to you, Murphy, of course, for your advice too, but especially to Max and David for joining, because like we really couldn't have had the conversation without you. If the two of you hadn't shown up, I probably would have canceled the meeting. So thank you for showing up and for sharing your thoughts and insights. Let's keep the conversation going on the Salt Extensions Discord channel. And I hope you all have a lovely day.
Yep. Thanks for leading the effort here.
Yep.
Yep.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.